Hey you guys, I recently made these really cute and fun cupcakes that look like cheeseburgers, and today I'll show you exactly how I did it, step by step. I made most things from scratch, so it was a fairly big job, but well worth it in the end. You could save some time by buying things pre-made like the frosting or brownies, but I'd at least recommend making the muffins yourself because they look so much like bread that it really completes the look. So let's jump right in. To make the brownies, you'll need a 200-gram block of dark cooking chocolate, white sugar, flour, baking powder, 2 eggs, and butter. You'll need just some basic equipment, a mixing bowl, spatula, whisk, sifter, baking paper, and a baking tray. To make the brownies fairly thin, I'm using a larger tray than normal. This one measures about 30 by 25 centimeters. So preheat the oven to 180 degrees. Melt the chocolate and 1/3 of a cup of butter and mix those together. Then add the 2 eggs and whisk. Next add 1 cup of sugar. Then sift in half a teaspoon of baking powder and 3/4 cup of flour. Line the baking tray with the paper and scoop the mixture into the tray, making it as even as possible on all sides and edges. You could put that in the oven for 15 minutes or so. My oven seems to cook things much quicker than most recipes call for, so just keep an eye on them. And then take them out and let them cool completely. For the muffins, you'll need some sugar, flour, eggs, milk, butter, baking powder, a 150-gram tub of vanilla yogurt, vanilla extract, and salt. You'll also need 2 mixing bowls, 1 large, 1 medium, a whisk, a big spoon, a muffin tray, and liners. Make sure the oven is preheated to 190 degrees. Start by sifting in 2 cups of flour into the large bowl. Next add 1 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and half a teaspoon of salt. You only really need to sift the baking powder. I just added them all together this time. Give that a mix. Into the smaller bowl, crack the 2 eggs. And add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and whisk those together. Then add the tub of yogurt and mix. Then you can add this mix to the dry ingredients in the large bowl, as well as 2/3 of a cup of milk. And give that a mix. Then add half a cup of melted butter and mix again. Now you can line the muffin tray with the liners and scoop the mixture in. Place those in the oven The recipe states 18 to 20 minutes, but my oven only took 14 minutes. You just want them slightly golden on top. Once they're done, let them cool completely along with the brownies. For the frosting, you'll need some milk, red and green food dye, butter, and soft icing sugar that's mixed with maize or tapioca. It's a good idea to actually use red gel dye instead of the regular water-based dye. I ended up using the whole 7 ml bottle of that before the frosting was finished, and then I had to switch over to this gel dye. It'll easily give you a richer color. You'll also need a couple of mixing bowls, sifter, spatula, a tablespoon, and an electric mixer. If you don't have one, you may prefer to buy some pre-made frosting and just color that. Make sure the butter is at room temperature, so it's soft and squeezable but holds its shape. Put 150 grams of butter into the bowl and beat for about 5 minutes. The butter gets stuck in the blades at first, but I turn the mixer on an angle and that helps to move it out. Give the sides a bit of a scrape as you go to make sure everything is beaten together. Now you'll mix in 2 1/4 cups of icing sugar in 2 stages. So sift in the first half. Slowly mix the icing sugar until it's blended enough to speed up the electric mixer without making too much of a mess. And sift in the remaining icing sugar. Beat that for another 5 minutes until it's pale and whippy. Now you can add 4 tablespoons of milk and mix it again for 3 minutes. Divide the mixture in half and you're ready to color the frosting. Start with a few drops of red, give it a mix, and continue doing that until you get a nice rich red color like tomato sauce. For the green frosting, you won't need as much of the dye. Repeat the same process by adding a few drops at a time and mix. I added just a few drops of blue as well to give it a cooler green color, but do whatever is to your liking. Now it's time to start putting the cupcakes together. You'll need the cooled muffins and brownies, colored frosting, and some fondant. I found this pack of ready-to-roll colored fondant at the supermarket. I really liked the yellow color to replicate the cheese. This was just enough for 9 cupcakes, and I rolled it super thin. You could also buy some white fondant and color it yourself with some yellow food dye and maybe 1 drop of red. I'll link a video in the description to show you the process of coloring fondant. For the equipment, you'll need a rolling pin, knife, 2 piping bags, or you can just use 2 resealable bags, scissors, a round cutter for the brownies, and square cutter for the fondant. I couldn't find proper kitchen cutters, so I'm using a small round jar, and I will just cut the fondant squares myself. First, you can put the frosting into the piping bags, so that's ready. If you're using the resealable bags, when it's time, just cut a small edge off for the hole. Next, you can roll the fondant. So far it's only enough for 6 muffins, so I rolled it a bit more. I'm using one of the muffins here as a guide for how big to cut the squares, and then use the knife to gently lift it up. And I had a little left over for one more. Using a circle cutter of some sort, cut the brownies. These will be the meat patties on the burger. And last but not least, cut the muffins into halves. The brownies and frosting will fill the inside of the cupcakes, so you may need to cut a bit extra off the muffin top and bottoms. Now you can lay the muffins out, ready to assemble everything. Put the brownies on, then the green frosting, the fondant squares, some red frosting, and then put the tops on. And this is the finished result. This was my first attempt at these, so they're a little rough around the edges, but I think they still came out pretty good. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you attempt to make these at all, I would love to read your experience in the comments.